Hanaina ora. Hello and welcome to the 7th installment of the Ælis tutorial series. Today's video is inspired by sheep. That is, it is inspired by the English word for sheep. Because while most other English words are pluralized by putting the letter S or ES behind them, the word sheep is the same in both singular and plural. This goes for 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep, or 4 sheep, or, basically any amount of sheep. The word sheep itself does not change. Why that is, no one knows, but it does prove that languages can function without their nouns clearly distinguishing between singular and plural. This approach is also applied in Ælis. In the second video of the series, we spoke about how root words convey an idea rather than having one specific meaning, and that according to the context, we can translate them with nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so on. Well, today we'll focus on how Ælis expresses the difference between singular and plural, even though the root words themselves don't change their form. The key for this topic is the root word ka. We've encountered this root when we discussed the number system, but we'll also need it today. Although I tend to translate this root by the word number, for today's approach it might be useful if we use the translation quantity instead. You'll see why in a minute. Just as with the English word sheep, one way of pluralizing is by simply adding a number to indicate how many instances of the respective word we're talking about. 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep. An example in Ælis. Aika ma means 1 man. Ekama means 2 men. Ikama means 3 men. Okama means 4 men. And wakama means 5 men. Of course, it isn't always possible to use numbers. Firstly, because not all words are countable words. And secondly, because we can't always put an exact number on the things we are talking about. In English, we then resort to adverbs or adjectives such as none, a few, many, and so on. This is where the qualifiers come in handy. If you haven't seen the video about the qualifiers, I highly suggest you do that first. So, we can also add qualifiers to the root word ka, quantity, to talk about certain imprecise amounts where we can't put an exact number on. Combining the root ka to the qualifiers, we get ka'ara, none, ka'aira, some or a few, ka'era, several, ka'ira, many or a lot, and ka'ora, all. These again can be combined with other words. Let's use the word ma for male as an example again. Ka'arama means no men, ka'airama means some men, a few men, ka'erama means several men, ka'irama means many men, a lot of men, and ka'orama means the total amount of men, or all men. While the word man is a countable, Ælis also applies this system to non-countable words. Let's use the root word goe, meaning water, as an example. Ka'ara goe means no water. Ka'aira goe means some water. Ka'era goe means about half of the water. Ka'ira goe means a lot of water. And ka'ora goe means all of the water. For the sake of completeness, here is the same example with the other words in the traditional model of the 4 elements. There is deo for air, geo for earth, to be understood as soil, not the planet Earth, and finally doe, which is fire. As a little intermezzo, here is a picture of the stick figure again. I decided to call him Malis. He is still pretty cool. So, we've discussed that plurals can be expressed either by adding a number, such as waka, 5, or by adding qualifiers to the root word ka, such as, for instance, ka'ira, much. Either way, the root word ka is always present, and this allows for interesting possibilities. The two approaches can be merged to create one very specific word. In this case, we would get wakaira, which means 5 is a lot. If we prefix it to other words, we get, for example, wakairama, which means 5 men is a lot. You can use this structure to add an implication about your expectations. If you say that wakairama came to your party, it means that you had expected fewer people to show up. A final note before we exit this video. Let's use the word goremi as an example. It means cat, cats, cat-like or feline. Now, if English is your native language, then you've grown up in a language that expresses the quantity of nouns as either one or more than one. In that case, it is a potential trap to think that the root word ga can be used to turn a word into a plural. So contrary to what you might think, the Ælis word kakoremi is not the equivalent of the English word cats. After all, aikakoremi still means one cat. What you do express with the word kakoremi is that you're talking about a certain amount of cats, but emphasizing the fact that you do not wish to specify which amount. The number of cats you're talking about can still be 1 or 0. Using this structure is very rare in Ælis. Usually, the root word ka is simply omitted, and koremi means either cat or cats. In most sentences, it is not even necessary to specify an amount, as context often provides sufficient information to understand the sentence correctly. Want to see the sheep again? Here it is. Anaina ora yawete. Goodbye.